great people that just got a really bad hand dealt with them, had some bad luck or had a bad situation. Or sometimes there are people that are homeless that had a bad medical situation, and all of a sudden their money was all gone because they had to pay for a medical situation, and now they couldn't afford to live in their home anymore or afford doing the things that they were doing before. And so there are a lot of hardworking, really good people who find themselves homeless, and because of that, they're embarrassed. They wish their situation were different. They would do anything they could do to turn it around. It's hard for them to be around other people because they think people look down at them or think that they're somehow less of a person because they're homeless. And this little girl in the story always felt like she had to not make sure nobody knew, because she was absolutely certain that she would be made fun of all the time. And so the title comes from How to Steal a Dog, because her and her brother, they were, I don't know, it's 8 and 6 years old or something, but their idea was that there was this dog in a neighborhood that was always out running around in its front yard, and they thought if they would steal the dog, then there would be a reward put out for the dog as though we're lost, and then they'd be the heroes, bring the dog back, get the reward money, give it to mom to help out being able to get back into an apartment. So that was kind of the whole gist of the story of this little girl's experience of having to try and be homeless with everybody around her trying to make sure they didn't know about it. And so that story prompted the school to invite me to come and talk about what goes on every day right here in Las Vegas. And stories just like that happen all the time. There are elementary schools right here in this town that have sometimes 200-300 homeless kids just in that school. There are literally thousands of students in the Clark County School District that are registered with no permanent address on their registration file that are considered homeless. There are about half of the students in Clark County are eligible for either a reduced or free food program in the schools, meaning that their parents don't make enough money that they are able then to get food, and they eat at least 2 of their 3 meals at the schools. And places like us and 3 Square working together, providing packs of food for them to take home on the weekends to make sure at least that these kids have food on the weekends. And so when I went and spoke to this school, back to the bottled water drive, their students, much like what you're doing now, asked, well, what can we do? And so when it would happen to be in April or early May, and so we talked about the heat, we talked about the need for drinking water, and they started about 4 years ago, they started a bottled water drive. That school that year collected 7,000 bottles of water, a little over 7,000 bottles of water. The next year they did it again, but they challenged the high school that they would all go to try and into a competition. And so between the 2 schools the next year, they went over a little over 20,000 bottles of water, about 25,000 bottles of water. But that year we got the news involved. And the news went out and covered the 2 schools competing in this bottled water drive. And so then actually the news station and several businesses that saw the story said, well, if the kids can do it, then we should do what they're doing. And so they matched it. So that year we did about 50 or 60,000 bottles of water. Then the next year, all those same businesses, same schools, and one of the teachers went to another elementary school. So now there was an elementary school, a middle school, and a high school all competing in businesses that were going to match. And so then that year, we actually went over 100,000 bottles of water. Then this last year, it went to a whole nother level. There were 4 high schools involved, several middle schools, a couple elementary schools, a bunch of businesses, and we did over 300,000 bottles of water that got collected. We still have an entire storage shed that is absolutely full of bottled water, so we're still able, even when it's not as hot out, to give fresh drinking water to those who are on the streets. And so you may think when we get to the end and you ask, well, what is it that we can do? And you think, well, we're 5th graders and there's only 30 of us, and maybe we can do a little something, but what difference will it really make? There was a group of about 50, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students that said, well, we're going to start with something and we think it's kind of small, maybe not a big deal, and did a bottled water drive. And now 4 years later, their bottled water drive then has now turned into taking care of thousands of homeless people during the heat of the summer. And so when we get to that, don't think that there's anything too small, and don't think that just because you're fifth graders, you can't make a difference. Because those sixth and seventh graders woke up a whole news network and a bunch of businesses and a bunch of other adults that said, good grief. If they can do it, then we can too, and they started leading the way in what's now a great drive. So, I answered your donation question, right? I answered your question, right, about how the kids maybe feel. And I want you to imagine what it would feel like if you had no home, you had no clothes to change into, you had nothing. How would you feel when you were surrounded by all your friends and all your classmates? So, yes, sir, you had your hand up earlier.
What time does the giveaway house open and close?
It opens at 9 o'clock every morning and closes at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh, okay.
So, and people can come and they can get at least a change of clothes at least once every month.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir.
What do you guys do if someone's pregnant and they have a child?
And they have a child?
Yeah, they don't have any money to pay for medical bill.
We don't do that as an organization, but we have other organizations that we can partner with, and some county clinics and things like that we can make sure that they get to. So one of the things that we're privileged to be able to do is we don't do everything that everybody could possibly need. You know, we're not a full hospital where, you know, we do have a doctor on site that can do basic things, but he can't do, you know, a lot of things that, you know, all the other doctors do. You know, if somebody has mental health issues, we don't do all that kind of stuff, but we're a resource that can help people get to all the places they need to go. And if we have to provide transportation, we'll do that. If we have to help them pay for a nominal fee, we can do those kinds of things. And so we have to partner with a lot of other people because we can't do everything, and we can't, and if we tried to do everything, we wouldn't do it all very well. And so we do the things we can do really well, and we partner with other people to do the rest. So, yes, sir.
What if they have asthma, they need like an inhaler?
If we can help them get that, we will do it. And sometimes those are things that that people need. And we do have a medicine room over where our doctor stays in his office to keep like basic cold medicines and things like that, or flu medicines, or you know, stuff for allergies and things like that to help out. So yeah.
You donate candies?
Donate candies? If you donated candies, that would be fun for us, because when we have kids, we love to be able to have stuff they enjoy. So if you have old stuffed animals that you don't play around with anymore, we can keep those around. Because could you imagine if you're, say you're 6 or 7 years old and you're staying in a shelter with a bunch of strangers and half adults and half kids, and you're sleeping in there at night and you got nothing? You know, how much would it mean to you to have at least a stuffed animal that you could grab hold of and kind of make it yours while you're there, and then we let people take them, or a toy? So those kinds of things that we have, we try to keep a supply of that kind of stuff in the women's and children's shelter, so we can have something for kids to kind of have while they're with us and can take with us. So makes it a little bit less of a scary experience especially for the younger kids. So you got a question?
Yeah. Is there a maximum amount of days you can stay in the home center?
That is an outstanding question. And yes, there is. For the regular folks that come in, we tell them they have the bed for 7 nights. So they at least know if it's an emergency situation, they at least know for 7 nights they don't have to worry about where they're going to stay. If they're working and they have a job but just have no place to live, and they can show that to us, we let them have the bed for 30 nights. So they have a chance to put a couple of paychecks away, save some money to be able to help them get back on their feet again. Where that's different is if there's some kind of a circumstance that needs to be an exception, or most importantly, when children are involved and it's families, then we'll work with them, and we don't have the same kind of limits. We put an individual plan for every family together, because our interest is helping them get into a more permanent situation. So sometimes, depending on what their situation is, that might take a month, 2 months, 3 months. And as long as they're working on it with us, we let them stay. And they follow the rules and all that kind of stuff.